That's awesome. Thanks for bringing that up. First off, I want to say shout out to Gowan Harding. Gowan, like you had mentioned, so he's been a huge supporter of ours. He invited me out early days, maybe about 5 years ago, to come see the Mont Bleu Stadium, and gave me a little bit of a history lesson on the stands that they were able to acquire from an old exhibition arena in Montreal that actually hosted Rolling Stones concerts. So they had built those stands that stand at Mont Bleu today for extra capacity for a Rolling Stones concert in Montreal. So it's just kind of interesting little story there. But he's been a supporter. He loves what we're doing with bringing the media up a notch around football and trying to attract more players and make the experience better for the kids to play the sport of football. But Gowan's actually really interesting thing he's doing this year. Something that he had tried with the Pee Wee level a number of years ago by taking them to the QMFL, which is the Quebec Minor Football League. Now, I think the team he has right now is actually a midget team. So our bantam level in Ottawa and NCAFA is actually, they call that midget in Quebec. And it's a 15, 16, and 17-year-old pairing of kids, which is the 3-year allowance that Football Canada gives you to kind of build a platoon together. He's been able to get into the QMFL, and they've got 22 teams, 2 divisions. They play 4 downs, and my impression, going out there to the new field that they're playing at, they're actually not playing at Mont Bleu. They're playing at Le Carrefour, which is, I believe, a public school. And they've got a beautiful turf field, electronic scoreboard, netting around there. And Gowan's really put together a professional, almost semi-pro CIS environment there with music between plays. They have an announcer. They've got a full coaching staff there, and the kids genuinely seem to appreciate all that extra kind of jazz with the game. They've got some slick new uniforms that were on display this weekend, and they're putting together a fairly competitive team. They currently sit in the standings in the 2nd division. So out of the 22 teams, the 12 teams are in the bottom division, and Gatineau stands 2-2 right now with 4 games played. So, I mean, it goes to show you that I think they were allowed to have about 5 or 6 players from out of territory to be a part of this team. They've got a couple kids that I coached at the Warriors. They've got some great athletes there, and they're hanging in some games, but by no means are they running away with the competition. The number 1 team is 4-1. There's actually 2 teams 4-1 and another 3-1 in that division. If you look at the even more talented or not talented but more competitive division, there's a 5-0, a 4-1, 4-1 team. So you can just imagine that gives you a kind of a gauge of where our boys are sitting with kids from all over Quebec and Montreal, which we know typically and historically is very good football in Quebec.
That's what I was sort of waiting to say is for some reason, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the personality of the French Canadians that come out on the football field or the passion that they have or the intensity, but they're just built to be football players. I know that traditionally in Canadian history, they're hockey players and all that type of stuff, but in my personal experience, never playing hockey, the amount of talent and the amount of intense players and physical players and honestly just naturally gifted football players that come out of Quebec, and that when we play against teams from Quebec, it's unbelievable how good they are. I'm always blown away by how great the players from Quebec are. And I know the story that you always tell me, and you've told a few times on this podcast before about your experience playing against Laval when they had a whole bunch of these French Canadian kids. They were just such unbelievably technically sound, fundamentally sound football players. It's a revelation how great they are coming out of Quebec.
Yeah, man, I agree. I mean, I tell that story, but there's something about it. It's almost like a bit of a culture shock. There's definitely a different culture. It's a good gauge of where you are, and as a football player, you're competitive. That's part of it's built in the DNA of the game, is to try to elevate your skill against others and kind of get a gauge. And it's cool to see some of the guys that we've been watching for a number of years. One that I will say is Avery, the Myers quarterback. He's out there as the starter for the Vikings team, and he's looking phenomenal out there. But I've talked to him, and he says, it's a bit of a step up. It's a nice experience to be able to go into Quebec, deep into Quebec, and play some kids and see the level of football over there. And the other kind of thing that we're getting feedback on is I know a lot of people have doubts about adding 17-year-olds to the bantam level and getting that 3-year platoon. But by all accounts out there, the 15-year-olds are getting a lot of playing time. They're fitting in with those groups, and really it's allowing the coaching staffs to have a little bit more time to groom these kids and instill a culture of loyalty and building towards something that isn't going to happen overnight, which I think is something that's often lost in this game at the amateur level. But no, it's very cool. I encourage anyone that's kind of interested in seeing kind of the ball out there, check out the highlights on the HESN YouTube channel. We had the week 1, and then we've got this game from yesterday up there against Sherbrooke Bulldogs, and just check out the caliber of ball. It's interesting, but a lot of these Quebec, Hull, and Gatineau, Ottawa boys doing really good out there.